Week 2 of the NFL season is officially in the books, and there have been a lot of surprises so far, both good and bad. 3 out of 4 NFC West teams are 2-0 to start the year, and to the surprise of a lot of people, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cleveland Browns have the same record through 2 weeks too. And in today's video, we're going to break down the biggest winners and losers from the second week of the NFL season. We're going to discuss what went right and what went wrong for each team in week 2, and what their outlook is for the next few weeks. One of the biggest things to remember, especially if your team is 0-2, is that it's a very long season, and no Super Bowl is won or lost after the second week of the NFL season. But I do think there are a few teams that look to be headed for a deep postseason run, while others could be looking at mock drafts as early as the first week of October if they're not already taking a glance and getting familiar with the 2026 draft class. There will be a couple of more winners and losers mentioned at the end of the video, in addition to all of the players and teams discussed in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 0-2 after a 20-17 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in a Super Bowl 59 rematch. And one of the biggest reasons we include the Chiefs in today's video is because of the concerns I have with this team moving forward. Patrick Mahomes has led the team in rushing in both games, and Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have not been able to run the football. And whenever you can't run the football, there's naturally going to be problems. And you're not going to win as many games as you should because you can't put teams away or simply move the sticks. And it's alarming that through 2 games, Patrick Mahomes has more rushing yards than Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco combined. Mahomes has 123 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns through 2 games, and Pacheco and Hunt have 94 rushing yards for reference. Now, one thing that has to be noted with the Chiefs, and really 2 things, is obviously not having Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy is going to play a significant part in limiting your offense. And technically, yes, Xavier Worthy played 3 snaps in the season opener, but in the grand scheme of things, you might as well say they haven't had him for either game. But why we include the Chiefs in today's video is their offensive line is supposed to be one of their strengths, and it hasn't been great through 2 games. And in a lot of ways, Patrick Mahomes has kept this team alive and has had to play a lot more hero ball than we've been used to over the past couple of seasons. And one thing I get frustrated with on social media is this notion that Matt Nagy is somehow responsible for all of this, as if Matt Nagy specifically asks Patrick Mahomes to play worse so he can be a villain on social media, which is a ridiculous thought, by the way. The Chiefs' offense, in a lot of ways, has been a production of what's been fed into it over the past few years. They had a great 2022 season where Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce had one of the best years of his career. Mahomes won the MVP, and the Chiefs won their second Super Bowl title. But since then, it's been a fight uphill. The draft assets have not went back into the skill position players, and Patrick Mahomes has had to work with guys over the past few years like a 34-year-old, or now going on 36, Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, who I think is fine by the way and will be fine, Sky Moore, who is no longer on the roster, Justin Watson, Noah Gray, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and you get the point. And with the Chiefs' offense over the past few years, it works until it doesn't. Now, with Patrick Mahomes, there's times where it's basically, hey, somehow, some way he'll turn water into wine and will win 12 games and anything can happen in January. But there has to be a baseline level of talent along the offense, and this is what I worry about with the Chiefs. A run game is a quarterback's best friend, and the Chiefs simply do not have a good run game at the moment, and that's the biggest reason they're in today's video. Now, I do want to credit the defense big time for stepping up the way they did in week 2, as they played significantly better against Philly than they did against the Chargers in week 1, but if the Chiefs are going to go back to the AFC Championship again, or of course the Super Bowl, they have to figure out the little things. And for clarity, I don't think it's as simple as Rashee Rice comes back and boom, the run game is fixed. No, this is something to be concerned about at the moment. And one other big thing for clarity is the Chiefs have 2 losses by a combined 9 points. If you think I am saying the Chiefs are 100% done after 2 games, that is not the takeaway either. But the concern with the run game and the lack of push the offensive line is generating, as well as the penalties for that matter too, are the biggest reasons as to why the Kansas City Chiefs are in today's video. And before we continue, I ask the question, are you looking to buy, sell, trade, or rip cards? I personally know that I love opening packs of cards every year with an upcoming draft class, hoping that I can get a player's rookie card, signed preferably for years to come, and back in 2019 I was actually able to open a signed card from an Iowa State running back named David Montgomery and a Clemson defensive lineman named Dexter Lawrence. And if you like opening cards too, well, Arena Club is changing the hobby with their original slab packs and no fee auctions. And with slab packs, you can rip a pack for as low as $25 and hit on a card that's worth significantly more. And with every slab pack, Arena Club will make you an offer for your card based on its estimated fair market value. There's no waiting minutes, days, weeks, months, whatever the case may be. Arena Club will make you an instant offer based on its estimated fair market value. I absolutely love opening cards, and while making this video, I actually opened a Mint 9 Jaden Daniels rookie Don Russ Optic, and right now you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/GFB. Once again, that's 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/GFB. And a big thank you to Arena Club for sponsoring today's video. Next up is the Chicago Bears, and within this portion, we're not going to talk about Caleb Williams missing a throw here or there, or him throwing what was a pretty ugly interception to Kirby Joseph in week 2, because the reality is that interception by Caleb Williams, while ugly, yes, and you can have a conversation about that, that did not have an outcome on the result of a game in which the Bears lost 52-21, and ultimately now in a 5-quarter sequence where the Bears have allowed 73 points in the last 5 quarters. That is really difficult to do, and the Lions in week 2, for reference, had 52 points on 58 plays. They nearly averaged a point per play, and the biggest problem that we're going to talk about and why the Bears are losers coming out of week 2 is because of the roster Ryan Poles has constructed. We are now in year 4 of the Ryan Poles experiment. By the way, Ryan Poles received a contract extension this summer, and he was 15-36 prior to the contract extension. Now, obviously, starting out with not 1, but 2 division losses, he's now 15-38, and for a man who once said, "We are taking over the North and never giving it back."
The last thing, the most important piece is we're going to take the North and never give it back.
The Bears have played 20 division games since Ryan Poles took over as the GM. They've won a grand total of 3 of those said division games, and one of those games that they won in the division required a fake punt return for a touchdown against the Packers in Week 18, and another was against Josh Dobbs in 2023 after the Vikings starting quarterback went down, in a game where Josh Dobbs threw 4 interceptions, and the Bears narrowly won 12-10. So this is where we are with the Chicago Bears. They are a train wreck right now of a roster, because this is not a roster where we're in year 1 of a previous regime that may have gave Russell Wilson a very large contract and you have to eat a huge salary cap portion or have a big quarterback on a very bad contract where we are limited in terms of what we're going to be able to do. No, this is a team that had not 1, but 2 number 1 overall picks. They obviously had the 2023 number 1 overall pick, then traded out, and Carolina had a tumultuous 2023 season themselves, and the Bears had the 2024 number 1 overall pick, which they of course used on Caleb Williams. Since Ryan Poles has taken over as the GM back in 2022, there's been some good decisions, and I would argue that the decision to trade out from the number 1 pick back in 2023 was a great decision by Ryan Poles. But there's also been some questionable decisions. Most notably, the 2nd round pick to go get Chase Claypool was a downright terrible decision, but since Poles has taken over, he has selected 34 players to become Chicago Bears. And this may surprise you, but a grand total of 0 of those players have become Pro Bowlers, and simply put, that's unacceptable. It is hard to do worse in terms of the production that the Bears have received from the players that Ryan Poles drafted out of the 34, given that none have become Pro Bowlers. And to make matters worse, for 2025, I liked what the Bears did in the draft by bringing in Colston Loveland and Luther Burden with their first 2 selections, but in the Week 2 game against the Lions, Colston Loveland had 1 target in week 2, 0 receptions by the way. Luther Burden had 1 catch for 5 yards. Ozzie Trapillo and Shamar Turner, their other 2nd round picks, were both healthy scratches. And what is the most frustrating part about this is supposed to be a contending year for the Chicago Bears. This has been the 3+ year buildup. The 15-36 in the first 3 years doesn't matter because we're going to go 10-7 this year and we're legitimately going to make the playoffs. But right now, the Bears have allowed 73 points in the last 5 quarters and they've allowed 698 yards of total offense. And that is ridiculously hard to try to do. So I kind of ask the question now that we are 2 full games into the season, one of which was against a premier NFC team in the Detroit Lions who really just, they had a field day. They had a highlight of highlights against the Chicago Bears in week 2. Amon-Ra St. Brown even pulled out the fake hamstring injury celebration on them, and I kind of asked the question to the Bears organization here. What is the plan moving forward, especially with the GM who was just extended, whose roster is not good and not where it needs to be for what is supposed to be a year 4 contending season in what in some ways is kind of a now or never year for the Bears, and we can clearly see through the first 2 games it's very much looking like it's going to be another year in which they have 5 or 6 wins and do not make the playoffs. Next up is the Detroit Lions. The Lions started their season off with a double-digit road loss to the Green Bay Packers, of which they lost 27-13. And I think it's fair to say that game was a lot further apart than a 27-13 game. The Lions scored a touchdown with a minute left to close the gap, and there were a lot of overreactions after week 1. I stand by the reaction that I had, which is the Packers defense being a Super Bowl caliber defense, but there were countless comments of the Lions will never be the same without Ben Johnson, and now you see the difference of not having Frank Ragnow and Kevin Zeitler, and I hope Lions fans enjoyed what they had while they had it, and you get the point. And I even had several comments go back to the 2025 Lions team preview in which I said this team can still get to the Super Bowl. Tell me how wrong I was about a season-long preview after a single game. That pretty much, hey, you're an idiot and the Lions season is over. But in week 2, they absolutely dominated the Chicago Bears to the tune of a 52-21 victory and had over 500 yards of offense in the game. And in a lot of ways, this was a highlight reel for the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 115 yards and 3 touchdowns, Jameson Williams had over 100 yards on just 2 receptions, and Jared Goff had a near-perfect game as he threw for 334 yards and 5 touchdowns. And this was a huge bounce-back win for the Lions after the game they had in week 1. And I do think in a lot of ways that playing Green Bay for the Lions in week 1 was one of the toughest games they could have possibly opened up with, knowing they were playing a really good defense with multiple new starters along the offensive line, as well as a new play caller too. And I'm also happy for John Morton, the Lions' new offensive coordinator, and think he is a big winner from week 2 as well. There were people calling for his head 7 days ago and saying how bad of a play caller he is compared to Ben Johnson and how he will never be that good, but he responded with a 52-point outing and the offense looked really, really good. Now, another big winner from week 2 was the Green Bay Packers. In 2 games, they've allowed 97 rushing yards as a defense, and they played the Lions and the Washington Commanders. Now, obviously, every year is different, but in the early parts of each season, you have to go off of the previous year to a degree, and for Green Bay to slow down Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in week 1, and to hold the Washington Commanders to just a little over 100 yards in the first 3 quarters in week 2, along with Jordan Love playing good football, I don't know how you can leave the second week of the NFL season and think that the Green Bay Packers aren't legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And what I think is even more impressive about this for Green Bay is, this is a team that wants to establish the run and get Josh Jacobs going. But in 2 games, Josh Jacobs is averaging just 3.6 yards per carry, and his longest run is 15 yards. The holes haven't been there for him, and he hasn't been able to get going, yet Green Bay has 2 convincing wins over a team that had 15 wins last year and put up 52 points in week 2, and a team that went to the NFC Championship game last year. I was also convinced over much of last year, and especially this summer, that Jordan Love was not fully healthy in 2024, and in the first 2 games of 2025, he's looked like a completely different player. He's confident, he's mobile when he needs to be, and he's been careful with the football for that matter too. And this is not slander towards first-round receiver Matthew Golden, it's actually the opposite, but he has 2 receptions in 2 games, and they've looked good offensively without him contributing in a meaningful way. So even for as good as the Packers have looked so far, I think there's a real chance they get even better in the next few weeks. Now, I am going to include the Minnesota Vikings here, and what I want to specifically acknowledge before we get into this is, while I was making this video, it came across my phone that JJ McCarthy is going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks, but I'm going to discuss JJ and how he played in week 2, and ultimately the play calling that came in from Kevin O'Connell, because that has nothing to do with the injury. Obviously, we wish JJ the best, and even Joe Burrow the best as well, who was unfortunately out at least 3 months, and everyone else that got hurt in week 2, right? But what I want to highlight specifically within the Vikings as to why they're in today's video is based on their week 2 performance against the Falcons. They were down 6-0 at this point in the game. They had a 17-play drive that took up 9 minutes of game time that should have resulted in a touchdown. There was a 3rd and 18 on the Atlanta 38-yard line, and I don't think anyone really thought that JJ McCarthy was going to be able to convert this 3rd down, yet he did on a beautiful ball to Adam Thielen. The very next play, he hit another ball to Jalen Naylor, which was a beautiful 17-yard pass that took the Vikings all the way down to the 2-yard line. And what I think gets a little misconstrued at times with KOC, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, any of the elite offensive minds, and if your team has an elite offensive mind, I did not leave them out purposefully. But what I think gets a little just misconstrued at times is, okay, you have this great offensive mind that everything is perfect, that it's all sunshine and rainbows. But why I include the Vikings in today's video is after those back-to-back plays by JJ McCarthy, two clear good signs from your young quarterback in a game in which otherwise he did not play well. And JJ McCarthy obviously did not play good against the Falcons, and outside of those two plays and the 50-yard completion to Justin Jefferson right before half, it was a very long night for the Vikings offense. This is where my frustration comes in with Kevin O'Connell. You are at a double-digit play drive. You just spent over $100 million on the interior offensive line in free agency in Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, and this was at a point in the game where both Ryan Kelly and Will Fries were still in the game. You also just drafted Donovan Jackson in the first round, and the very next play call was a passing play in which JJ fumbled, and JJ did pick it back up and eventually threw the ball away. But my point is, if you are in that situation, correct me if I'm wrong, but why would you not just hand the ball off to Jordan Mason 4 times and basically say, hey, this is our best on best. Jordan Mason's a really good goal line back. Go ahead and try and stop us. Because if you don't stop us, then Will Reichert's going to kick the extra point. You're going to be up 7-6. Instead, the Vikings had that play where JJ fumbled the football. They had a false start to take him back to the 7-yard line. Now, instead of at 1st and goal at the 2, JJ gets sacked on 2nd down. Now it's 3rd and 14. And when you have 3rd and 14 or 3rd and goal from the 14-yard line, there's not really a lot you're going to be able to do, because at that point you kind of just want to protect the football to get a field goal out of the drive, and JJ got sacked for a 1-yard loss before Will Reichert kicked the field goal to make it 6-3. But that specific situation and that specific sequence for the Vikings to have the ball on the 2-yard line and end up kicking a field goal from the 15 or the 16-yard line is my frustration with Kevin O'Connell at times, because I do think as a play caller, obviously he is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, but I definitely think at times that he gets too cute with it. And if the Vikings score a touchdown on that specific drive, like they should have, and it should have been 7-6 at that point in the game, who knows what happens after that. Now, again, JJ McCarthy played bad. That part has to be noted. We, of course, wish him the best in recovery, but that sequence right there specifically is why I include the Vikings in today's video. I would also argue that the Vikings haven't done a great job in terms of setting JJ McCarthy up for success from a play calling standpoint, and what I mean by this is look at what Shane Steichen is doing with Daniel Jones and what the Colts have done over the first 2 games. They've done a tremendous job, and enough credit cannot be given to Shane Steichen and Daniel Jones for executing the offense at the level they have. But when you sit back and think about Justin Jefferson and how good of a player he is, when is the last time that Justin Jefferson has caught a slant route? And that is one of my biggest frustrations, is because JJ McCarthy, whether you think he's a future draft bust or not, he was a 1st-round pick, and I have no doubt in my mind that every NFL quarterback can hit Justin Jefferson on a slant route between the 1 and the 8. Do what you can to help your young quarterback get in rhythm early to get his confidence going, especially for a player who has only played in 2 games since the 2024 National Championship almost 2 full calendar years ago. Now, again, JJ McCarthy is out for the next couple of weeks, but I did at least want to include the Vikings in today's video because there's a lot of things that they're doing or not doing offensively to set JJ McCarthy up for success in the first couple of games of the season. Now, again, JJ McCarthy has also played bad, and there's been a lot of ugliness and growing pains within the first couple of games of the 2025 season for JJ McCarthy, but there's also been a lot of frustration from a play calling aspect too. Every team in the NFC West won as well this week, so I do want to credit the NFC West for going 4-0 in Week 2 of the 2025 season, and especially the 49ers for how unfortunately banged up they are this early in the year. If they can get healthy, they could be a very dangerous team, and as we know, this team went to several NFC Championship games over the past 6 years, and I wouldn't put it past them again if they are a fully healthy team in January when it matters most. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as I cannot thank you guys enough for the support, and we are closing in on 215,000 subscribers. Thank you to Arena Club for sponsoring today's video, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.